Did you know that your intestines can actually still move around even when they're removed from your body? Well, Paul Joseph Barthez did, and in the 1700s he coined this term called the vital force, which was basically this mysterious energy that allowed your guts to move around on their own. After this, scientists started to think about how the gut maybe is the control center for all of these involuntary functions of your body, and maybe there's some kind of connection between the gut and your central nervous system. Ideas of the gut-brain connection were really solidified in the 19th century when Robert White discovered tons of nerves in the gastrointestinal tract. Robert White's findings begin to fuel this idea of the great abdominal brain, and today we call our guts our second brain. Fast forward 200 years, and people are considering taking poop pills to cure their depression and anxiety, and they wouldn't necessarily be wrong. And it's not entirely a new idea. Around the 4th century, the Jin dynasty was treating people with food poisoning using a soup that was made from human feces, known as yellow soup. This is carrot soup. I'm not eating poop. Okay? I'm not eating poop. We have something close to 100 trillion bacteria in our gut. And these little guys have been implicated in things like asthma and obesity and neurodegeneration and a whole bunch of other things. But for now, let's just take a look at what we know about the bacteria in your gut, which we collectively call the gut microbiome. So when you eat something, the bacteria in your gut are going to help you to break down, extract, and absorb the nutrients from that food. But that's not the only thing that they do. We called our gut our second brain, right? And that second brain is always trying to communicate with our first brain, our brain up here. But that communication is actually going to be heavily impacted by the bacteria in your guts. The most well-known connection between the two brains is the vagus nerve, which is just a nerve that connects your brain and your central nervous system to your gut. But it's not the only means of communication. Bacteria are known to communicate through the endocrine system, through the immune system, and they can even communicate directly with the intestinal cells. Think about this. Your gut is basically lined with these communities of bacteria that are constantly secreting these chemicals, which they use to signal and communicate and run their day-to-day function. These chemicals are known as metabolites, and they're the key to how your bacteria communicate with the rest of your body. In a study of 1,267 people, scientists were able to find that the gut microbiome produced close to 10 million genes across all the subjects. That's 10 million genes that could potentially code for metabolites. I need to make a quick correction here. The genes don't code for metabolites. Instead, they code for proteins, including enzymes, that create metabolites. Anyways, back to the video. And each of those metabolites could have a completely unique effect on your body. Scientists are studying how these metabolites might affect various aspects of our health. One popular field right now is the effect that the microbiome might be having on our mental health, like on depression and anxiety. And there are studies going on neurological disorders in the gut microbiome, like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Here's an example for you. Hormones play a big role in our stress response, and there's this system known as the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. It's a mouthful, but it controls your stress response. You can imagine that if your microbiome were to produce metabolites that could influence the production of certain hormones, then maybe it could influence this hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis and influence our stress response and how anxious we feel. We know these microbial metabolites also have an impact on the immune system. They can affect immune cell behavior, which is great because that'll actually help you to fight off infections. The problem is when the activation is inappropriate. If, for example, your immune system were to be inappropriately activated in your brain, that can lead to things like multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. One of the more interesting findings is that microbial metabolites can act like neurotransmitters and communicate with your nervous system. Some of the bacteria in your gut can actually stimulate the gut to produce serotonin, the feel-good chemical. 95% of the serotonin in your body is produced in your gut. But there are biological barriers that actually prevent it from getting to your brain. Speaking of barriers, there are two main barriers that control how the gut can communicate with the brain. The gut epithelial barrier is a barrier that sits between the food in your intestine and your blood. And essentially, it filters out the nutrients from your food and allows it to pass into the blood without letting anything else in. Essentially, it's keeping your blood nutrient-rich but pristine. Your brain is even more picky. It has an even tighter barrier known as the blood-brain barrier. And its real purpose is to prevent things like bacteria from getting into your brain and infecting your brain. But sometimes metabolites can sneak through, and if they do, they could have an effect on your brain. They may even allow more things into your brain. If something gets into your brain, that can now cause inflammation, and that inflammation may cause a neurological condition. Right now, we have a lot of links between the gut microbiome and different aspects of human health, but it's challenging to find cause and effect relationships between these things. Given all these recent findings, people are interested in keeping their microbiome healthy. What we know so far is that a diverse microbiome is related to greater health. And the way to promote diversity in your microbiome is to eat diverse foods, focusing on whole foods and high fiber content. Fiber is an example of a prebiotic which better supports the diversity of your microbiome than a probiotic, while you have these other things like fermented foods, like yogurt and kefir and sauerkraut, which are known as synbiotics because they feed and supplement your microbiome. Right now, we can't say for sure if a particular probiotic or a diet is going to help you cure a neurodegenerative disease or treat a mental health disorder. However, as scientists continue to study this field and understand the microbes and their metabolites, scientists can start to detect diseases early on and start to treat diseases. For now, we've only just begun to scratch the surface of this field. There's so much research going on right now. So you gotta stay tuned, you gotta eat well, and you gotta thank those bacteria in your gut for doing their job.